News, fewer women are employed compared to their male counterparts across all levels of education. Added to this, COVID-19 and lockdowns have also had adverse effects on women's employment status. To talk about this, we're joined by Kristal Duncan-Williams. She's project lead with Youth Capital. Joining us live now, Kristal, thank you so much for being with us. We've been talking a lot in the last day or so about a cabinet reshuffle. We finally have an announcement. When you look at this new reconfigured team of ministers, do you have faith that we finally have a group of people who will be able to help turn the tide for women economically in employment?
I think that the general consensus around young people and young women is that the president hasn't really walked the walk, so to speak. The president is always calling on young people and young women to step up. But when the moment was there, he didn't really offer enough positions to, fresh blood. If anybody's been following conversations on Twitter and on various social media pages, the youth of South Africa are really disheartened by this outcome. I think it's nice to see lots more women in power, but a lot of them are older. They've been around the block a couple of times, and young people are saying, when are we going to get a seat at the table? When are we going to be able to step up and shake things up a little bit? Because I think we can all agree that's what South Africa needs right now.
And is that what we ultimately need, Kristal? I mean, you said it's there towards the end. Do we need a more younger leadership, as an under 35s? Because the youngest ministers, I think, are either in their late 30s or early to mid 40s currently.
Absolutely. I think, we've seen that youth unemployment is, in my opinion, and the opinion of Youth Capital and the young people of South Africa, the greatest challenge that South Africa faces. If we do not address this crisis now, the cycle of intergenerational poverty will continue. We cannot grow an economy when young people, who are the majority of the population, don't have money in their pockets to spend in the economy. And in order for them to do that, they need employment. So we really need to turn the tide on youth unemployment. We were set on a terrible trajectory before COVID. We have continued on that terrible trajectory. And what we failed to do to date is to have a shared plan that puts the voices of young people and their experiences at the center. And we can only know what young people are thinking and what they believe the solutions are if we speak to them and we really listen to them and we give them space in those decision-making spaces. And so far, the government has failed to really do that.
And I mean, what you're saying is proven by the fact that there's research currently in the country that suggests that women, for example, have had a tougher time going back to their old work setups. This is pre-pandemic conditions, whereas men have been on the rebound. They've done fairly better.
Exactly. If you look at the results from the NIDS-CRAM study, which is, there's 5 waves that have been conducted over the course of lockdown since April last year, we see that young black women have continued to be more marginalized. So men have kind of bounced back, if you want to use the term, increase in earnings, have recovered slightly from the job losses, but women continue to either have reduced salary or job losses in the pandemic times. And we know that women before COVID were even carrying greater responsibilities for childcare. And now within the closure of schools, a lot of daycares have closed for good and creches because of financial hardships as a result of COVID and the lockdown. Women are now being stuck with making the choice of either going out to work or looking after their children when they can't afford to do both. And so women are still at a disadvantage, and we need to think about what are the interventions that can support these women to be able to look after their children, provide a safe environment for their children, but also have an income to support their families.
And one of the people who have to make those considerations is the new Minister for Small Business Development, Stella Ndabeni-Abrahams. She herself is quite young, especially by cabinet standards, is a woman. SMEs are regarded as one of the key economic and employment drivers in the country.
Absolutely, and I think that's somewhat encouraging for me. As you say, she's one of the younger ministers, and she is a woman herself, and one would assume that she then understands the particular struggles that face young female business owners. But I think what the mistake we've made in the past when it comes to small business is we've thrown a lot of money at investing into small business, and what we fail to recognize is that young business owners need more than money. They need mentorship, they need guidance. A lot of these young people do not have access to any employed people or people with experience in the business sector, and so these small businesses are doomed to fail. If you haven't ever been employed, how do you know how to run your small business, despite the wonderful ideas and innovations you might have in mind? And so when I think if we're thinking about SMEs as being an entry point into the labor market and also as a point where we can create employment, we need to think what are the holistic support mechanisms that young business owners need, young female business owners need in particular, beyond just financial support.
And what do you think those interventions are currently lacking?
So firstly, mentorship, as I said, how do we start, there are lots of very successful business owners in South Africa that are much older. Let's get them on board. This is where I call to private sector and individuals out there. What are you doing to empower the youth of tomorrow? You can't run your business for forever. Who are you handing the reins over to? So what does that mentorship look like? Basic skills in accounting and bookkeeping and how to run a business, offering courses free of charge to young business owners, providing kind of creative hubs where young business owners can come, where there's free Wi-Fi, access to computers, the kinds of things that young people struggle to get access to. And then particularly, with young women, is it having, a youth hub where there's childcare for that young female aspiring entrepreneur to leave her child while she has access to Wi-Fi and coaching and mentorship to run her business. These are some of the innovations we need to start thinking about.
You mentioned earlier in our conversation the loss of faith in the government and governance systems among the youth, right? You've got unemployment, at least by official tallies, among the youth specifically is at around 46%, and some say even that is a conservative estimate. How do we begin then to win them back and rebuild that faith, given that it's going to take a very long time to get all of those young people in jobs or in some kind of business or another opportunity?
So firstly, we at Youth Capital have come together with young people and looking at evidence and research and in consultation with all the actors in the space, and have come up with an action plan, which are 10 actions that we believe we need to take as a country if we're really going to shift the needle on youth unemployment. And people are currently endorsing that plan, from individuals to organizations and young people themselves. And so we think this collective and shared agenda, having one roadmap that we can all follow, is key, number one. Number two, having active youth participation. So that doesn't mean that, once in a while you call for a consultation and you invite 5 young people and then say that you've consulted young people. Over COVID, we've used WhatsApp platforms and social media platforms to have real conversations with young people around policies that affect them. And I think the government can do more of that, particularly as young people have become more proficient with being online on these platforms, as the cost of data continues to decrease. How to use platforms like WhatsApp that are affordable for young people to really get their input into these policies that affect them, and how these policies should be implemented. We know that implementation is always where policies fall short in this country. Mm-hmm. And I think that's largely because we don't understand the realities on the ground. The ministers don't understand what it's like to be a young person in South Africa in 2021. And so we really need to talk to young people and listen to what they have to say, and not do that in a tokenistic way.
Kristal Duncan-Williams, good to speak to you. Thank you so much for being on Newzroom Afrika. Just ahead for you today, we'll discuss COVID-19 breakthrough infections, as I was telling you earlier. Meanwhile, I want to show you pictures